So often I have found that in those moments in my own life when I have been called to do something, it has been called for a U-turn of where I thought I was going to be going or what I was going to be doing. And yet, God's grace has always been there, active and alive, and so very present in bringing so many blessings. To begin, I'd like to emphasize that I don't think one can put enough emphasis on the situation of the home in our world today. And I speak of it, from my own experience. I think I grew up in a unique moment in the church's history in the 1950s in Chicago, which at that time was about 60% Catholic. Of 6 million Catholics in the, what they call, I believe, the larger Chicago archdiocese and area that it extended beyond that. I grew up in a parish with 3 active priests, 14 sisters teaching in a grade school of 750 students. And that was an experience of the Catholic Church that had such an impact on me and truly gave me a vision of the beauty and the richness of the life of the church. My parents were what I would classify as everyday Catholics, nothing special, but yet very faithful to the life of the church and always participating in its life. So, for example, my father belonged to the Holy Name Society in those days. I don't know if it still exists. And my mother was a member of the Altar and Rosary Society. And it's hard for us to remember or to even believe, but at that time, in the Archdiocese of Chicago, in the seminary, they had 500 seminarians. Wow, that was true in Chicago. And we were expected to be at morning mass every day before we came to school. My father went with me, and there was that sense of a love of the church that I received from my father. In those years in the seminary, we received an unbelievable education. 4 years of Latin, 4 years of English, 4 years of history, 4 years of social study, 4 years of math, 3 years of French, and only 1 year of science. Back in those days, science and technology were not that important. But it was a great education. But what I want to emphasize is what I did outside of the classroom was so very, very informative in relation to my vocation. I played basketball all 4 years on the intramural team. I taught catechism at a military school in the city there where boys did not have much contact even with their own parents. I tutored kids in the inner city that were from very unfortunate home situations. I belonged to the debate club. I joined the French club, and everything kind of created, at least for me, a sense of working together with others and doing things in community. And they were all good and constructive sort of projects. And that really influenced me. In my home parish, we had a parish priest who took great interest in us young men. In the summertime, we would have a basketball clinic that met 3 days a week, but it brought us together, and he showed a real interest in us and encouraged us as we started to move through the seminary. But then something happened as I moved on to the college seminary. We started hearing a mantra learn to burn with your own oil. What was it saying? You're going to be alone in a parish, so get used to being able to do things yourself. That really had an impact on me. And it helped me to realize that God was probably not calling me to be a diocesan priest, but rather to be a priest and a member of a religious community. And so I began to look at various different religious communities that had apostolates that really worked with my own vision of what I would like to do and my own use of and giving of God's talents. In our parish, we were fortunate to have on the weekend, so you can imagine how big the parish was. With our 3 full-time priests, we had 2 Dominicans that came every weekend to help with covering the masses. I had a chance to talk to one of these Dominicans, and he suggested to me, you know, listening to you, I think you ought to take a look at the Benedictines. And it was in that context that I began to see my vocation from a different perspective. Now, the great mystery, and this is where I begin to speak about this U-turn. In the Chicago area, within a 100-mile radius of my home, there were 4 Benedictine monasteries. And I went to visit all of them, but none of them really seemed to really grab me or to really attract me and encourage me to consider further life with them. A classmate of mine from the high school seminary moved to Oklahoma the summer before. And Oklahoma, at least, I know at that time and still now, sends seminarians to Conception. And he said, I think you ought to come to Conception. It's a very vibrant community. The emphasis that you have always appreciated with the liturgy and music are elements that are very strong there. There's a common element of life of the community working very closely together in this seminary. And that became an important thing for me. Well, I went, and I can tell you it was love at first sight. So, interestingly enough, our community has a basic understanding that someone entering either comes with 2 years of college or 2 years of work experience. So you don't just come right out of high school. So I went back to Chicago, and I pursued one of my great interests in music and studied at the American Conservatory of Music, which in the end was going to be a wonderful thing. And so I then applied and entered the novitiate and went through the program, graduated college at our own college at Conception, and then was sent to study theology. During those years, I gained a great interest in the scriptures. And in addition to that, I had thought of being able to pursue further studies in music. So when I went to talk to the abbot about going on to do doctoral studies, I talked to him about my interest in music. And here comes the next U-turn. He said to me, you know, I've noticed from your school record that you've done very well in your studies in Greek and Hebrew. And we're going to need someone to be teaching those courses in the scriptures in the future. What would you think of going on to do studies in Scripture? And I said, well, I honestly thought I was going to be setting Scripture to music. And he said, well, I'm going to ask you to think about this, to go on for graduate studies in Scripture. So I did. But that was a real U-turn, but it became one of the greatest blessings of my life. I went on and finished a doctorate in biblical studies, and then I came back thinking that I was going to move into the classroom to begin teaching Scripture, and the abbot had another U-turn for me. We'd like you to move into the administration of our college seminary. So I spent the next 12 years in the administration of the seminary. However, being able to teach a course in Scripture each semester while I was there, and it was a great experience, particularly from the point of view that it broadened my sense of the spiritual life, being spiritual director and then being rector, and being the person who would relate to the different dioceses that our seminary served. At that time, we were serving 21 dioceses in the Midwest. And we had an enrollment slightly over 100. So it was a rare time, a good time, and a very interesting time. So just when I thought that now I've put in my 10 years of administration and I can go back to the classroom to spend my time teaching Scripture full time, 6 weeks before I was to leave, I had been invited to come and teach Scripture at our International College in Rome. I was elected abbot. So that was going to be a whole different experience of becoming a spiritual father for this community of about 80 monks. Those were 10 marvelous years. And again, I thought, okay, I've given myself to this fully 10 years. And then we had a Congress of Abbots. And at that Congress, we were going to be electing a new abbot primate. But my own thought was, I've given 10 years to doing this. Another 5, 6, 7 years, and I can retire and spend some time. Guess who was elected? And it remains to me to this day a great mystery, because there I was before 260 abbots, most of whom I had never known because my work had been primarily at Conception as an abbot. And I was elected abbot primate. So that brought me into a whole new ministry, and I can tell you, being abbot of a community is a world of difference of being abbot primate and serving an international community of Benedictines from around the world. And it was very, very inspiring in many ways to be able to go to different countries and to find how alive the Benedictine spirit was, and in places that were highly non-Catholic, to see how they had lived the life of the rule of Saint Benedict so authentically and so full of life, and having so much of an influence on the areas where they live. It was a wonderful experience, and one that was very engaging. And if you can imagine being abbot of 100 monks at home, plus the world's situation, I was abbot during the pandemic. It was quite an experience of trying to keep 100 young monks safe during that period. One day, they called me from the office and they said, there's someone here from the Carabinieri that would like to speak with you. And the Carabinieri is the local police. So I thought, oh my gosh, what's this? And they said, we have received a series of complaints about your young monks who are occupying themselves in the backyard, playing soccer, having a good time, laughing and enjoying themselves. Well, here we are cooped up in our 1 and 2 room apartments. So in typical Italian fashion, I looked at him and I went, what do you do? I thought we were taking a very healthy approach to this sort of thing, being active, keeping them together, no one off the property. And we had been, because as you know, there were 2 different areas in northern Italy, in Piemonte and Lombardia, where the plague of the pandemic had really begun. And so the rest of Italy was really very, very careful of this. But in an attempt to keep a healthy lifestyle, we encouraged them to play soccer and to do that sort of thing during the day. So again, that was a very worthwhile and a blessed time in my life. So after 12 years as rector, 20 years as abbot of my own community, 8 years as abbot primate, they wanted me to take on another 4 years, at which I had said, basta così, enough. I need to go back to my own community and try and pick up my monastic life again. So here I am today to talk to you about the fact that the mystery of God's plan, as we can see, often brings us to U-turns where we would have least expected it. And yet in the midst of that, all is grace. God is forever searching us out, keeping us close to Him, and enabling us to be of service to one another in love, in fidelity, and in goodness. And so I come before you today, having made vows 55 years ago, to tell you that I would not have it any other way. And I'm so grateful to God for the little ways in which He has directed me to the place where I'm going. As you can imagine, my family had said to me initially, we have 4 Benedictine monasteries within a 100-mile radius. Why are you going 450 miles away? And so I explained to them that, one of the beautiful elements of Benedictine life is we take a vow of stability, which means that the community to which we enter, we stay and build the life of that community for our whole life. And so they began to say that. One of my brothers was a bit upset about my going away and being so far from the family. But after a while, and after my life as a Benedictine, he came to see me and he said, I've come to realize, join the Benedictines and see the world. So, again, my word to you is very simple and very direct, that listening to that voice of God, being open to God in prayer and in our celebration of the Eucharist, God is speaking to us every day. It's a wonderful thing, and I think a tremendous honor for any of us to think that when we get up to read at Mass, we become the voice of God addressing the community. And that can never be emphasized enough. So I encourage you in your own various vocations, your various ministries, your life of prayer, your times together, that to know that you are making a real difference. And there are people like myself who have lived with a beautiful dependence on your prayers and your goodness. Thank you.